Ever since he emerged on the Earth, man's resourcefulness has allowed him to adapt and control his environment, gradually overcoming the many challenges that faced him. The history of his inventions reflects this versatility, and as each succeeded the other, he changed his world at an ever-increasing pace. But while even the simplest of his inventions had dramatic effects on his society, none of them individually appeared to threaten his intellectual uniqueness or superiority. But the effects of one invention, the microprocessor, could potentially at least change all that over a very short span of time.
Less predictable and possibly more far-reaching are likely to be the effects on human beings as individuals and on human psychology. Man has always considered himself to be unique, if not in the entire universe, at least on Earth, and has based this belief on the unquestioned superiority of his brain and his intellectual powers. The mighty micro, slowly at first, but with increasing strength, will begin to challenge this uniqueness and this superiority. The challenge will come at a number of levels, some rather obvious, others more subtle, and for that reason possibly more disturbing.
The most obvious effects will be the coming of the robots, on the one hand taking human workers away from hazardous environments, but on the other reducing the workforces. Traditional reading and writing will gradually be replaced by electronic language. The spread of cheap and powerful teaching computers may at last lead to a conquest of worldwide ignorance. The cashless society may become a reality as coins and notes are taken over by electronic money. Credit cards will be transformed into sophisticated personal identity devices. But increasingly, the computer will hold more information about our personal lives. The power of the electorate will make itself felt directly and instantly from the home. With orbiting communication satellites, person-to-person radio and television links could spread throughout the globe. And this rapid expansion in the flow of international communications could well begin to affect the political climate in traditionally enclosed societies. Wars may well be fought, not on battlefields, but on computers, and ultimately the power of the microprocessor could well make global warfare extinct.
These tremendous changes, any or all of which could occur between now and the close of the century, are going to have unsettling effects on many of the institutions that society presently leans on. But great, even catastrophic upheavals have occurred in the past, and society has somehow managed to adapt.
And the most immediate challenge will be the possible overturning of our traditional working lives.
The Bible's full of phrases implying the sanctity of work. For example, the devil finds work for idle hands to do. The need to work has been so much a feature of our history that we assume it to be an inescapable, even a psychologically essential aspect of life. The workload of our predecessors was backbreaking and intolerable, and any reduction was counted as being beneficial. But in recent years, as the working week has continued to shrink, the first questioning voices have been raised. Is it a good thing?
This question seems to me to be a throwback to a semi-superstitious past. Man is an animal who needs to be physically and mentally active, but there's no suggestion of any evolutionary requirement to work, to slave away day after day, year after year, simply in order to get money. If the robots can do the work for us, while we lie around in the sun, why not let them?
Some of the golden eras of cultural and artistic achievement bloomed when a leisured class was supported in luxury by a population of slaves. And the main thrust of artistic, philosophical and scientific endeavour has always come from individuals with the time and the money to pursue these interests. What was evil about these societies, of course, was that men lived on the backs of other men, treating them as little better than animals. And it's no surprise that all slave-based societies have ultimately collapsed into ruin. The machines of the Industrial Revolution became, in a sense, our slaves, and although some would argue that we, in turn, became enslaved by them, we can now at least appreciate the benefits of increased leisure time and a generally more affluent society. Why then should we object if more of this work is carried out by even more sophisticated machines? One of the big problem areas, of course, is to persuade people that this is possible. People without work are seen as the most miserable and dejected citizens of our society, and this is largely because our social values suggest that the unemployed person is somehow shiftless, stupid, or unimaginative. The indignity of unemployment leads to bitter aggression or apathy against the society that has produced it. And for our younger generation, caught in the transition from one industrial revolution to the next, this violence could become even more telling. In the coming decade, the 19th century work ethic is inevitably going to become irrelevant and redundant as robots begin to produce our goods, and fewer people actually need to work in the office or factory. Ironically, the main task that lies ahead will be finding ways of paying the unemployed to buy the goods our robots and our computers will help to produce. But in the long-term future, the microprocessor and the ensuing computer revolution hold the promise of shorter working weeks, more leisure time, and an increasingly affluent society. All this, coupled with cheaper international travel, will allow us to explore our world more fully, seeing that life is rich with the possibilities of enjoyment, from the most basically physical to the cultural, artistic, and creative. But the computer age will really come into its own with education. It's not going to be an easy task, and one of the first important roles for the new generation of advanced teaching computers will be to help us with the fundamental, universal re-education that'll be required. A lot of money and a lot of thought is going to be ploughed into turning these devices into really good teachers. In fact, in the 1980s, computers are going to become the most interesting gadgets on Earth. Already, even with the crudest of games, the first taste of far more exciting things to come, the computer is a dramatically enticing device. There's no doubt that the computer's endless patience, its readiness to interact with us at any time, all the characteristics that should help to make it an excellent teacher, are also going to make it a perpetually interesting companion. There are reports of students at universities who form emotional attachments with their computers, deliberately cutting themselves off from normal human and social interactions. The children at this American school involved with the Plato project use the computer for about 30 minutes a day, and in no way has it taken over from the teachers. But nevertheless, these computer programs are sophisticated, intelligent, and flexible enough to meet the demands of individual progress. We asked the children what they felt about Plato.
It's kind of fun. Some of the things on there is it's better to do than it would be on pencil and paper.
Like if you go to school and you're really down in the dumpies, when you go to Plato and you get all these fun games and everything you do is something like right, it makes you real happy.
Well, it's like there's someone there teaching you how to do all this math, and they're teaching you how to
to do these problems, but really it's just a computer.
Well, it's kind of like Plato was talking to you. It's, no, that's wrong, or, yep, would you do another one for good old Plato, or something like that.
I like Plato because when I grow up, I want to be something to do with electronics or something. And that's why I like it, is because I like electric things. And so that's why I like Plato the way it teaches me, because it's interesting.
Well, she loves Plato, to tell the truth. When she goes on Plato, she sort of hums while she types.
So many of the children have become very attached to their computer. But is this because it's simply an endlessly fascinating machine, or is the computer displaying some form of intelligence?
So what do we mean by intelligence? Well, most people assume it's a property shared by all human beings. But what about animals? Do they have intelligence, for example? Well, I suppose most people would be very cross if I said that he didn't have any. But would you say that this was intelligent? Well, obviously not. But is this because it's mechanical, made out of plastic and bits of metal? Or is it something to do with the limited way in which it behaves?
Intelligence is the capacity to respond and adapt to changes in the environment. The more versatile the response, the more intelligent the creature. After all, versatility is the keynote to survival in the animal kingdom. For most of us, the ant has a frighteningly organized society based on group intelligence. These leafcutter ants particularly have an uncannily human quality about their movement and sense of purpose. This type of robot is environmentally aware and acts on the information it's gathering. If we saw these actions being done by animals, they could be counted as intelligent behavior. So it's reasonable to talk about intelligent machines, and as time goes on, they're going to get steadily more intelligent. We've already suggested that man's self-image is heavily tied up to his notion of intellectual superiority. Next to God, he's the most intelligent of creatures. Are intelligent machines likely to challenge this uniqueness? The age-old threat of man dominated by the machines he's created?
In the case of intelligent robots like NASA's Mars lander, which is programmed to roam around looking for alien life, no one need feel intellectually threatened. Our sensitive egos are unlikely to be disturbed by special-purpose robots of this kind, no matter how clever they are. But when the intelligence is closer to home, the threat becomes more obvious and more real. Once upon a time, people used to say that a computer could never play chess. Now, computers can beat 99.6% of the world's chess players. And by the mid-1980s, many people predict that a computer will be world champion. Here, international chess master, an outstanding tournament player, David Levy, is having a tough time, a really tough time, playing a computer. Levy admits that it's like playing a very intelligent human, and the experience is really quite eerie. And it's in the field of machine intelligence that one of the most intriguing examples of the future of computers lies. Although in overall intelligence, machines are still extremely backward in comparison to human beings, we are making them slowly more intelligent, mainly in order to help us solve the problems of our terrifyingly complex world.
Many tend to think of the American space projects of the 60s as something of a public relations exercise, beating the Russians to the moon and so on. But some very real spin-offs have come about as a result of these journeys beyond the confines of our planet. From silicon-coated frying pans to the silicon chip computer, these and a host of other technological innovations have gradually filtered into our society. The Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California has helped to seed many space programs and is presently monitoring the Jupiter Voyager probe. Also underway are developments in robotics, the results of which we will inevitably see on a more mundane level in our consumer society. And these involve the creating of more intelligent machines which will assist future space efforts. This electromechanical arm, partly under human and partly under computer control, is used to study the tremendous coordination problems involved in what is to us the relatively simple task of finding, grasping and picking up an object. In other experiments, specially developed robot jaws have all kinds of sensors built into them. And here the often tiny muscular forces involved in the human hand are being replicated in a mechanical hand. The results monitored and analyzed by a computer. To increase the intelligence of this type of robot, JPL scientists are even giving their computers a rudimentary sense of touch. The minute pressure patterns exerted by human fingers on a pad are analyzed and the data stored for eventual use in very sophisticated robot arms.
Okay, let's nice.
Machine intelligence is also beginning to spill over into areas once thought of as exclusively human. This computer-controlled body scanner was a world-beating first for British technology.
Okay, Liz, now I want you to hold your breath for about 20 seconds. Now a deep breath in and right out, and a normal breath in now, and hold it very still.
Here, the power of the computer provides a vital early warning system by scanning slices of the body step by step. It can detect the presence of cancer and other illnesses in their formative stages.
Let's see the next slice.
Okay, Liz, a deep breath in
Oh, it's very good.
and right out, and a normal breath in now.
Perhaps there's little in the way of actual intelligence there as such, but the Mickey system at the Charing Cross Hospital, developed by the National Physical Laboratory, acts as a versatile and intelligent assistant for today's increasingly hard-pressed doctors. It is portable, cheap to run, and even introduces itself to the user. It has enormous advantages for the patient, too. She can spend as much time as she wants answering questions about her illness. These will later be used by the doctor as an aid to further diagnosis. Some patients are in fact less embarrassed working with a Mickey computer than chatting with a doctor.
Age, how old I know?
67.
67.
In this American hospital, the computer is moving a stage further. An even greater measure of intelligence is present in this electroencephalograph, where a microprocessor examines the complex patterns of electrical information in the brain.
Which we have attached already. Okay, now we're going to acquire the EKG.
These signals are too complex for all but the most highly trained medical experts to understand. But the machine interprets its findings and even advises the doctor on the most likely diagnosis.
Okay, let's just tear it off again.
If these seem like rather mundane and perhaps very rudimentary examples of how intelligent machines are already beginning to help us, let's look at another, literally more way-out application. For years, astronomers have pondered the mystery of the nature of spiral galaxies, those infinitely distant clouds of gas which could be universes in the making. Part of the trouble is that the timescales involved are so immense. Millions and millions of years must pass before even a single arm of a nebula is formed. But now, using the computer, IBM scientists have been able to simulate the rotation of vast amounts of matter, compressing millions of years into a few seconds of time. To their amazement, the computer began to form a familiar picture, and they were able to watch the birth of a spiral nebula before their eyes. Here, the intelligence of the computer, though again adapted to a special purpose, is directly tackling a fundamental problem in science, and its achievements are being studied with excitement by astronomers and cosmologists all over the world. But even these uses may seem too specific and unconnected with our more immediate problems. The world's population is growing at a horrific rate. Some say it will have doubled by the year 2000. The trouble is that while we all know this in numerical terms, we find it difficult to grasp, either intellectually or emotionally. And because of this, we tend to ignore it. The massive Plato project educates through computer programs, some simple, some extremely complex. They have the power not only to teach, but also to present fundamental concepts in a way that literally no human being could hope to match. You choose a country whose population future you want to explore, in this case, India. The intelligent programs on Plato simply do not allow one to ignore the implications of population statistics. The computer tells you that a childbearing woman up to the age of 45 has an average of 4.9 children, and that their life expectancy is nearly 49 years. And it plots out the total predicted population based on these figures. Today, India has about 650 million citizens. But in just under 30 years' time, the population will have doubled. But now, Plato allows you to change things to suit yourself. As medical science progresses, life expectancy might well increase to, say, the age of 65. We've taken a projected period of 60 years, and the computer shows us that as people live longer, the population will double in only 20 years' time, with the 2 billion mark reached 15 years beyond that. Tap in some data, and to counter this, we reduce the fertility rate to 3 children per woman of childbearing age, and Plato points out that this will only postpone the doubling of India's population for 32 years. The point here is that the computer provides us terrifying information in a way that simply cannot be disbelieved or ignored. Information that no human being could ever spell out quite as effectively. And this is just the first impact of the intelligent computer. In the future, as their intelligence grows, their impact will be almost sensationally greater.
Some scientists believe that we could be creating a machine species which might someday supersede man as the dominant being on the planet. And if progress in computers continues at its present breakneck pace, this might happen sooner than we think.
Perhaps this sounds like science fiction speculation. Actually, it's a bit more solid than that. It's one of a number of possible futures which might arise as the result of developing extremely cheap, enormously advanced computer power. And the time to consider these possible futures is now, while we can still exercise some control over them.